Have you ever stopped to think about the fans behind a band? What is it about the music that keeps fans coming back for more? Or is there more? My name is Renae Lipsmeyer, and I am the host of this podcast, The Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. Each week, a fellow DMB fan joins the show to discuss their journey with the band. Welcome to the Space Between Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans behind Dave Matthews Band. If this is your very first time to listen to this podcast, I want to say that I am so happy that you have shown up. I am so happy that you're wanting to know more about this band. I'm so excited that you want to know more about the culture around the band, because that, as I'm podcasting about, is like a whole huge part of Dave Matthews Band and why they've been able to last as long as they have. Next year, 2026, we celebrate 35 years with this band, and that's even just saying it sounds crazy. And so I'm sure those of you that are listening to this are like, wow, let that one set in, guys. 35 years of Dave Matthews Band. So this episode is going to be a little bit different though. So if this is your first time listening, don't think that every episode is necessarily going to be this way, but I have just felt very led to do this. I have so many people listening and or watching this on YouTube, and I'm just so thankful for all of you that keep tuning in or that are tuning in now. So I just wanted to take this opportunity, use this platform to not only talk about Dave Matthews Band. I have, of course, brought a fan of Dave Matthews Band on the show today. So it's not really going to be that different, except she's going to co-host the show, which is kind of new. I've done it a few times in the almost 3 years that I've been doing this podcast, but I've decided that she should co-host because she is a guest that is coming back into the space between and is going to really kind of dig into her story a little bit deeper. And the reason why I asked her to do that was because it's something that we need to talk about. It's something that needs to be talked about more than what it is now. Let's welcome her in. Okay, tell us who you are, where you are. Tell us something about you. Tell us, like, how did you hear Dave Matthews Band? Like, just casually, like, remind us where that happened.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. Anytime I get to spend it with you is just like the stellar thing. Renee and I have this every Tuesday standing date to try to, as a mastermind, to try to lift each other up in what we want to pursue in the world. And we make it about 50% of the time, but it's always there. So it's always there for us as a placeholder. So it's nice to be here. I am Caroline Markel. And when I was actually a guest the first time, it was probably listed as Hammond because I had yet to change my name.
I think so.
Caroline Markel is my name. I am the founder and CEO of an organization called Safe in Harm's Way. And you can find us at safeinharmsway.org. We get to be a PSA on the Space Between show every episode. So thank you, Renee, for that.
Yes.
And I am coming to you from the Midwest, right in the middle of the country. So how did I discover Dave? I discovered Dave because I was very intrigued about a man from South Africa who had a band, and the rest of the people were all people of color. Stefan was there at the time too. So two people, two white guys, and then people of color. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. I just thought, like, who is this guy? And what the heck? So started the journey of, I was very, new mom. My daughter now is 32. So all of my kids have grown up on Dave, but it was the first introduction was reading a Rolling Stone magazine and then getting on at the time. I don't know if anybody remembers this. I'm hoping. Otherwise, I've dated myself just how old I am.
You're not old.
You could send in, for a penny and pick 12 CDs. And I just went in. And at the time that their first had been released, so got that. And just started nonstop listening to it.
Yeah, man, I BMG and Columbia House money somewhere in this
I'm sure.
universe. A
I'm
lot of
sure.
us do, but like, how can you not get 10 CDs for a penny? That just seems financially irresponsible if you don't. However, the small print was something we should have read and taken more seriously. But you know what? It didn't even take a social security number back then. It was just
Exactly.
name, address, what tin do you want? Okay.
Exactly.
We all
Exactly.
did it. We all did it. So thank you so much for being willing to co-host this particular episode. I think this was just going to be the best way. So Carolyn was on the show, as I mentioned before. It was actually released on February 16th of 2024, which was part of season 4. So lots of episodes between the time you were on and the time you are on now. And your episode has always been one to me that stuck out. Not that every episode hasn't had its own remarkable stories in themselves, but when talking about my podcast to people that don't understand what I'm doing, or yours just always comes to mind, and it captivates an audience when I mention what you exposed to me and all of the people that have listened to it so far. Because in case you're not familiar with this show, or haven't heard any episodes where I say this, I never pre-screen who is on the show. There's a conversation with the guest who says, "Hey, I want to be on the show." I go, "Okay." I write them down. We figure out a time. None of my recordings are live. So I feel like if it didn't work out, or if some crazy person got on, then, okay, no big deal. Like, it's not going anywhere but right here in front of me. But I never pre-interview anybody, so I don't know what they're going to say. But the reason why I do that is because I genuinely want to give a genuine reaction to whatever it is that they're going to tell me, whether it's the happiest of happiest things. I want to be so excited with you because I just heard this for the first time and I'm excited. Or, whatever they divulge, I just want to give a very genuine reaction to that. And so I would say that your episode, unless I'm misremembering, your episode was one of the first. It was not the last, but maybe the first that ever caught me, and my stomach had a reaction to where I thought, I'm not going to get through this episode. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I wasn't expecting this. What do I do? And that was a funny feeling because, I was a nurse for 15 years. So I've heard a lot of things: happy, bad, sad, terrible, unfortunate. Just, I've heard it all. But this story stuck with me because I just found myself unaware of some serious things that I thought, well, everyone should know this is happening. It caught me off guard, and it kind of made me nervous, and it kind of just sat with me a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, I want you to come back on and retell this story, because there are more listeners. There are people that will listen to this one versus going back in time and trying to find that early interview, even though it was just in 2024. There's just been so many interviews between then and now. But I do invite you to go back and listen to it. But we're going to retell part of that story. Yes, we are definitely not skipping on Dave Matthews Band. We're going to definitely, those two things just kind of intermingle in this story. So hang on, guys. If Carolyn, if there's a warning that we could put out for maybe some listeners that maybe, I don't know, our age range of listeners is anywhere from young, and I'm talking 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds that are listening to this podcast, fully aware, parents fully aware. So let me say that, because I know I have talked about sex, drugs, and rock and roll on every episode. So those parents are fully aware of what these kids are doing. They didn't find this podcast because I'm what's happening on TikTok. That is not the case. But I've had every age range. If you could just put out like a, hey, this is what we're going to do, what would you say to the listeners that are listening right now?
I want to echo what you've said about the whole foundation of the podcast is related to the fans of Dave Matthews, the Dave Matthews Band. So we are going to incorporate that in here. There's a time, I think, also in what we have in the state of the world that allows for some conversations to organically happen. And one of the conversations aligns with much of what is happening right now in the world. And that has to do with the impact of the normalization of violence against women and against men in the form of sexual abuse under the umbrella of domestic violence as a whole. It's important to have these conversations now because we just had last week, survivors from Epstein demanding that and telling the stories and demanding that there be an accountability. And so the conversation we're having today falls in those buckets. I want to say if this is something, and statistically, 40% of our male listeners and over 60% of our female listeners are going to have had this experience, sometimes never having spoken about it before. If you're one of those people, and this is too much, then maybe bow out on this episode. If you're one of those people and you're intrigued, or you love someone, or you work with someone, or you're a friend with someone that has experienced this, we're going to have some resources at the end on what you can do to be a good ally and to offer help. So it's not going to just be a trauma dump. It's going to be, here's what happened. Here's how people can show up in the world. And here's why it's important to the overall community of Earth in which we live. So trigger warning on the topics, but we're going to have some solutions. And I think there's not a time when I've told my story. I know that there's not a time when I've told my story that people don't come out on the other side feeling less alone and less silenced in their own journey, whatever that is. Maybe it's related to what we're going to talk about. Maybe it's something steeped in so much silence and shame they've never been able to say it out loud. We solve some of that today with solutions and ideas and resources.
Awesome. I'm so excited to get into this. So let's dig into it now. And we're doing this one a little different, as I stated earlier. And here's another reason: not only is she co-hosting, but I put out some questions on social media asking for, what would you ask in this scenario? And I've had several people write in. So as you're sharing your story, we'll get to some listener stories, people that listen to the podcast, and some questions that they have that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. But also, I think it's really good to put in different point of views, different thought processes of people asking genuine questions, because I just wanted to make sure this is a big part of not only this is what happened, but what would you do if approached and this had happened and you didn't see it coming, like I didn't see it coming when interviewing Carolyn back in 2024. How can we respond differently other than just our mouths dropped open? I think that's a natural response. So
It
I'm
is.
not dogging myself at all. I'm just saying, like, what is something that could follow up after I pick my jaw up off of the floor, like, and
Exactly.
so I think that that'll be really cool to incorporate later after you've shared your story. So let's jump into it. If you would, if you're ready, I'm
I
ready.
am. I am.
And I think our listeners are too. We've dangled it out there. So let's talk about it. So let's go back. Tell us what time frame are we going back to?
We're going back to, we're going to have a couple different landing points. So we're going to go back to 2008, 2009. 2008 or 2009 was I was in the process of getting divorced. That divorce was final the middle of 2009. In that moment, I reconnect with somebody that I went to college with. We were really good friends in college. We hung out all of freshman year. When you go in freshman year and you're like so nervous and you're so angsty and you
Yeah.
like meet a couple people and you just kind of hold on until you figure your
Yeah.
shit out. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he was one of those people. And we grew
Yeah.
up in the same small area. Our schools, we didn't go to school together, but they were maybe less than a mile-ish apart. And so then we reconnected 2008, 2009 from having gone to college together and started a relationship. And it was a relationship that in the first beginning of it was just magic. It really was magic. Lots of fun, lots of travel. I went to so many Dave concerts with this person and really built a solid foundation of what ended up feeling like a solid foundation.
Was he a Dave fan before you, or
No.
was okay. Just
So yeah,
trying to
joined in on the festivities once I had him go to a show with me.
gotcha.
And we traveled all around the country to see the band live. multiple shows, the whole thing. And that relationship, I talk about how relationships start out with love and magic and poetry and beauty. And then some cracks start to kind of fall into these things. And so we were together for about 8 years. And I could have told you during that time. If we were friends at that time and you were on my social media, you would have known when I got off. And those were the times when I felt like such a fraud. I would leave social media because it was this back and forth of beauty and light and magic, and then this demeaning and this nastiness that would creep in. And I felt so fake about the love I was in that I would get off social media. And at the same time, if you're a person in a relationship where it's feast or famine, where it's, oh my God, I love you so much. And who the fuck do you think you are as a vacillating
Mm,
emotion?
yeah.
That's actually emotional abuse. That's actually some
Yes.
narcissism sneaking in there. And
Yep.
so I couldn't, I would have defended him because that's what men like him and women like him do. They create this facade and this story of, I know sometimes I get cranky, but I'm really stressed out, or, no one has ever loved me like you. And so sometimes I'm just not used to that love. And I'm awkward and I'm a little weird. And so when your friends come to you and say, I don't think he's a good person, and you repeat that story, yeah, I mean, he's never had this kind of luck before and he's a little awkward. So you start repeating the story that the person tells you. And the more you repeat that out loud, the more you try to live it and embody it. And aren't we all designed, to give grace and
Yes.
to help somebody along on their own journey?
Right.
So and this is probably, I've written 5 different books, all become bestsellers. I've been on many, many podcasts, been on national magazines and national news stories. And I always talk about, I would have never said I was being abused ever in those 8 years, but I could have told you how sad I was. Could have told you how worried I was about my safety. Could have told you that I thought he was probably lying to me. Could have told you I was afraid. Like I would sit in the driveway afraid to go in the house because, my God, if I didn't fold the towels right, everything would be destroyed.
Okay. That was going to be my next question is how did you feel afraid? What were
Yeah.
those feelings of fear for you specifically? It was just things like not folding the towels correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. Or, whatever he decided to throw at me, even if I would say, like, you're not making sense right now. That actually didn't happen. I mean, then it was worse. It was like this avalanche. I remember like being in the bathroom door and putting my legs against the door while he's screaming and pounding on the door. So sadness, worry, lies, screaming, all the time, screaming, fear, and the pain of not knowing like what felt like I was going crazy. Because at the same time
Yeah.
he's doing those things, he's whisking me off to these fabulous trips and amazing dinners and, wonderful adventures. And so the back and forth of that actually made me feel crazy. And
Understandably.
and so that turns out is a cycle that a lot of people live with forever, or they decide this isn't for me, or they have something come at them that is so egregious, you then have a bigger choice. Do I stay or do I try to escape? And so that choice for me happened in 2016. Great day, went out, had a wine tasting with friends, a great dinner. We got home and he said to me, Love, I think I've done something that's going to make you mad.
Oh, and you're
And I
thinking
said,
probably who knows what, right? Like
Yeah,
you probably have no idea what he's about to
no
shoot out.
idea, no idea. And I said, Well, what did you do? And he proceeds to pop open his computer and show me that he's been corresponding for 2 weeks with another couple, telling them where I worked, sending them all my pictures, telling them where we lived, telling them where our kids went to college. We do not share children, but our children did all go to the same college. And then offering me up to have sex with them, all without my knowledge, all without my consent.
What?
And I was
What was
like,
he saying when he presented this? Like, this is a great opportunity, or
Yeah,
like what was he saying?
yeah, I just need you to be open, love. Sweet pea, I just need you to be open this idea. And I said, like, do you know
Who are
these
these
people?
people?
And he's
Right.
like, no, I just met them on Craigslist. I'm like, how do you even know who they are? Like you've given them so many parts of me. Where's the parts of you that you gave into this? And
So he
first of
didn't
all,
give out personal information of his own.
no,
He gave yours out.
he gave mine out. So I said, I'm not mad. Not at all. I'm fucking livid. Get out of my house. Like, we are done. Now, this is about 5 weeks before our wedding
Oh
that was
my.
already planned, already paid for, eloping to New York. Get out.
Did
And
he automatically just walk out, or was he like,
no,
no?
he turned this ugly shade of evil, is all I can describe it of. And he's like, you will shut your fucking mouth and you will climb back in this bed. And
What do
I
you
was
say to
so
that?
scared by his tone and I was so afraid of leaving that I climbed back in bed. What I also heard over my ear in this very calm voice is just be quiet. Just wait for him to fall asleep. And it just kept saying that over and over. So I did. I'm crying in the bed. He's trying to like spoon me. I'm sobbing in my pillow. And he says, I'm going to leave my computer out. If you want to check it, go ahead. I'll correspond with them tomorrow and tell them that you're not game for this. I said, let's be clear. I'm never game for this. I'm not game for this. So he left his computer out. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got up and went to our kitchen and I opened his computer. And what I found was so sickening and horrific that I couldn't comprehend it. And I shut his computer down and I thought that must be the most evil spam email I've ever seen, and decided to go back to bed. And I got to our bedroom door and that same voice, my kids and I think it's either our dog Casper or God or who, it's either God or Casper, like
Yeah.
whoever's that voice was. Go check out that computer. And I opened it back up and I found out that, whew, always like feel it back here in the back of my head. That for outside of the first 6 weeks of our 8-year relationship, without my knowledge, without my consent, he was going on multiple sites and he was advertising me to have sex with other people. All those emails would start out with, my girlfriend has no idea that I'm doing this to her, and ended with, I will facilitate what can be done to her. So he was part, the egregious, that first email that I thought was horrible, horrific spam was actually the advertisement for the group he belonged to, which was a group of men who got together and talked about how to drug and incapacitate their wives, their girlfriends, whoever in their world they wanted to, and then allow them to be raped by other people who signed up for that spot.
So there's a group. Do
There's
you
a
know
group.
if this group is just men, just women? Do you know
I don't.
anything
I
about
don't.
it?
I did a
I'm
whole
sure
bunch
it's
of
a
homework.
secret
Yeah. I did a
thing,
whole
of
bunch of
course.
homework at the time. Craigslist, most unhelpful. Craigslist was like, really sorry about your luck. Um, so
Yeah.
unhelpful. And I didn't know how, and that's when like my brain and my body split, because what I also found on his computer is that he had been doing this. This was his work laptop. So he's the senior vice president of a major company in the energy field in Kansas City. It's a family-owned company. He's the senior vice president. He had been doing this not only to me in the entirety of our relationship, but to other people that he was involved with as well throughout
Oh my God.
the past, I think it amounted to 40 years.
God.
So I also discovered all of his affairs. And so my mind started to focus on the affairs, because had I spoken or had I focused at all about what I found out about me, I think I would have lost my mind. And that is actually a trauma response. So you don't get to control that. Like, I can, in the year of 2025, look back and know I'm a certified trauma coach now. I've developed a worldwide organization that deals directly with domestic violence. I know all about trauma responses. That wasn't a choice. My choice decided to focus on his multiple affairs and not what I found out about what he was doing to me. So that moment is when I started to hatch my escape plan of how I was going to leave him. And I think actually at this point, would love it, Renae, if maybe we took a question, because there could be a
Yes.
question aligned to what I just said that
Yes,
would
we've
allow me to better direct the questions that I'm sure any listener might also have as well.
Yes, let's get to some questions. Okay, here's a question from Maria Salome Garde. Thanks for submitting a question. What is his motivation and mental diagnosis? And I guess we could ask that more of like, what do you think? And then how did he benefit from doing this? Did you see any red flags when they started dating or through their marriage?
I didn't see any red flags. I didn't see, I mean, outside of what I talked about, which was my own feelings, the sadness, the worry, the lies, the screaming, the fear, the pain of our relationship and how he treated me. As far as the sexual assaults, did not feel or see any red flags. Now, I will, what his diagnosis is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But when I left, I did not tell, I left without telling him what I knew. I created a very big story that allowed me to leave without telling him what I knew. I was safe before I ever allowed myself to process what specifically was done to me.
Yeah.
So I can tell you that over the course of our relationship, there would have been times that my body was giving me something's wrong. But there's never a moment where I would have said, you know what, I bet he's drugging me and he's allowing other people to rape me. I bet that's what's happening. So constant yeast infections. And I'll tell you when that little epiphany came to me, that is something that my body, guys, we're going to talk about girls' bodies. Ladies, I'm sure you can feel some of
Hey,
this what's going on.
this is just adult
Um,
talk.
when there was a new sexual partner, even with using protection, I would get yeast infections. I had them all the time. I had them all the time in my relationship with him. I didn't make that connection again until after I'm out of it. And I was like,
Of course.
son of a gun. There were
Yeah.
times where my anatomy felt bruised or harmed in some way. And I thought, man, I went too hard in spin class. Like, I got to be aware. I even remember talking to
Right.
my instructor saying, is there a different seat that I should be using? Because
Wow.
so I always chalked it up to something different. And so those were some of the things in my talking to people, some of the things that they've experienced that I didn't is them actually waking up during sex when they had been drugged and not knowing where they were. And this is
Right.
what I'm saying is it isn't the ugliness that you can get randomly at a bar. This is a partner relationship where they drugged them so that the partner could have sex with them. What they get out of that, I don't know. I've done a lot of
Yeah.
podcasts with therapists who have differing ideas about what they get. It's all a sexual deviant kind of thing. An official diagnosis, won't know what that would be for him or for the others. And it's
Right.
not my sphere to have that diagnosis.
Yes.
ICD-9 code, readily available
Yes.
for that. But there is something deviant in the need for that, for
Yes.
somebody to be incapacitated. And so the amount of podcasts I've done with therapists, I've one, she's an incredible human who just across the country works on and advocates on behalf of children. She's a licensed therapist. She actually helps create changes that keep children more protected. And her name is Sybil Cummin, if you'd ever want to look her up. But Sybil said, Caroline, had you told anybody, hey, if you had even thought it and then spoke it out loud to a therapist, I guarantee you they would have diagnosed you as delusional, probably put you in a 3-day cycle. Therapists aren't wired to understand these dynamics. The amount of women I've talked to who had that actually happen to them, substantial. The amount of men I've talked to who have voiced that to a therapist, it's dismissed. Like, certainly you misunderstood the relationship. This is a you problem, not a them problem. The
Wow.
amount of calls I've gotten from therapists who've listened to the podcasts I've done, and any of them saying, I have patients who've told me this and I've demeaned them. I didn't believe them. I thought they were delusional. And they had evidence, just like I did. Certainly, this just must be some kind of weird fantasy. And this is something you need to process. You're delusional in looking at it that way in the face of black and white evidence on a page, right? So both therapists who treat people having the epiphany of, so this is real, this happens. And then people who did expose themselves to a therapist and were just marginalized and dismissed. That's the first time that happened, I decided that's when I really started getting serious about writing books, about sharing my story. I've done it in front of over 175,000 people now from major international corporations who've invited me to talk about overcoming adversity and sharing that part of my story, just an intimate little, a round table discussion. Because statistically, if it's not been a drug induced rape, the latest 2024 data came out, 60% of women will have experienced some form of domestic violence as it relates to sexual assault. And the rates for men have jumped from 1 in 5 to 2 in 5. So a 20% increase. And that is I'm going to be specific because I don't want people to think that a male on male sexual assault have to do with any particular demographic. It has to do with male on male. It is heterosexual men knowing that the best way to dehumanize someone and scar them for life is to sexually assault them. It's the fastest growing statistic we have in our country.
Mm.
So this is something that in the overall umbrella of the normalization of violence, and you can follow me on the socials. I've been a little inactive on Facebook and Instagram. We're figuring out how to differently come to market right now. But on LinkedIn, you can follow me at Caroline Markel, and I talk about it quite a bit. We have Safe and Harm's Way on LinkedIn as well. And those kinds of stories are becoming more and more important to tell, which is why I decided, once I realized that this is a problem bigger than me and not just me, that I started to be more vulnerable. I usually hold my shit together. If I'm in front of a big audience and I look out and someone's crying, I get some every time. I get teary-eyed every time. But usually I'm fine in the feelings. I'm fine in getting a little teary-eyed because it's sad.
It
It's sad that
is.
this is
Yeah.
what happens to so many people, and no one wants to talk about it. So I'm gonna, with your permission, I'll ask. You think it's a good idea? I'd love to throw out some stats so people can comprehend
Please.
how big this problem is. So I
Yes,
talked
please
to you
do.
about this. Thank you. I talked to you about the 60%. I talked to you about the 40% in men. This is all coming at a time when funding to nonprofits has been decimated. And not only has it been decimated by the refusal to release grant money, and let me explain grants for a second. If a nonprofit's doing a grant, they submit their grant proposal in accordance to whatever the grant is in the organization that's issuing the grant. In this case, let's talk about it as the federal government. The federal government says, yes, do that grant. It falls in line. And that nonprofit then meets every expectation and continues to report, all the while paying for whatever the grant is supposed to serve themselves with their own money and paying partners who help to make this grant dream come true. All of that money's been outlaid. So when the federal government says, we're not going to pay the grants, not only is there no income coming in, but that money has already been spent by the organization and also already been paid by the organization to any partner helping them. So the partner doesn't get paid as well. So we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars at Safe and Harm's Way. It also emboldens some people to take away their promised donations. And that has happened too. I've actually had feedback where people said, I just think you help too many Black people.
What? That
Just
was
think,
their reasoning?
yeah, yeah.
Oh my.
So it just allows people to feel as if we're at a normalization of violence, and allows people to speak out loud, maybe the things that they've never said before, but happy to know it about them now, because
Yeah, for
it
sure.
means, I now have a better understanding of who those people are. So
Yes.
that is all happening. So these statistics are rising at the same time funding is disappearing. Services are disappearing. A survey was done with nonprofit leaders across the country. 80% of them have had to cut back on what they're offering to people who are navigating this type of violence, whether it's an overall umbrella of domestic violence or specific to sexual assault. 100% of the respondents feared of whether they'll be able to stay open at all.
Yeah.
So at the time, with statistics rising, we've got the complete disillusion of programming and funding. And it's a perfect storm because people are going to not be able to get the help they receive. And the
Right.
reason why that they need to receive, and the reason why that I'm gonna love what we're talking about today, and I know that we'll get into it, is Safe and Harm's Way. And I alluded to this. I've been kind of quiet on my own socials and Safe and Harm's Way outside of LinkedIn because there's also the risk that, depending on what words I use, and if I create services for everybody, could be labeled a terrorist organization. Kind of like trying to figure out how to navigate that as well.
Wow.
But it's really important to know this, because if the majority of sexual assaults for young people are going to start in high school and college. And if they go to their best friend and say, this happened to me, and the best friend does not respond in a positive way, and really, who knows how to respond in a positive way? Kind of like when you do a podcast and the podcast host gets their look on her face like, what? And why did I say yes to having
What
Carolyn on my
happened?
show? And we're going to talk about how can you show up? And that's how one of the ways we are going to be pivoting. As friends, family, and coworkers, how can we show up when somebody divulges that? Because if you don't handle it correctly, statistics also show that that person will not speak out about it again until the average age of 52. So if it happens in high school or college and they don't speak about it again until they're 52, we have lost decades of humans living in silence and shame, and silence and shame can kill. So we have to
Yes.
figure out a way to have these conversations that allow people to feel safe and seen and heard. And then also for friends, family, and coworkers to receive that in a way that allows people to take the next step toward healing. So that's like the 12-pound answer to that 2 hour.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
it's
let's do a couple more questions. They are still just coming in. There's a lot of questions, so I know that means that your story is going to touch a lot of lives. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go through and read some because there are some comments that aren't necessarily questions, just some feedback or, some personal things. So we'll get to some questions, but I'm going to try to read as many of these as I can. So this was submitted from Amanda Johnson. She said, as someone who was mentally and financially abused by a narcissist, this makes my heart heavy. I hope that she had a good support system, personal and professionally. Is that someplace that you found yourself after you found yourself where you were?
I am the most fortunate person in the world. There is not one friend that said to me, I don't believe you. There was not one friend that said to me, you know what, he's always seems like a good guy. Those people, my friend group, when I hatched the plan to leave, secured boxes and were waiting in a cul-de-sac, one over from our house for him to leave so that they could swoop in and start packing everything. The man who installed our security system, and I'll tell this a side story. My former fiance loved the house we bought. He loved it because our master bedroom was on the back part of the house with a separate entrance. And now I know why he wanted that separate entrance. Now I know why he loved it. We had a security system. That security man, I let him know that I was going to be planning an escape. I let him know what I found. God bless him. As soon as my former fiance left the home, Tony came over, rewired the entire system because my plan was to remove everything of value that I loved, stay in the house and not let him back in. So that
Yeah.
was the plan at the time. So they were moving everything out that was mine. Friends were moving everything out that was mine. Tony was rewiring the system. The man who came over and redid our entire basement came back over any tile that we had of value that I could resell, removed all the big TVs off the walls and transported them to a safe space for me. The people at his work were in touch with me to keep me posted if he left the building for any reason. And I know I won the lottery there because that does not happen.
I was just sitting here thinking, what do you mean his work was supporting you? How did he have a job after you?
They supported me in protecting me. Excuse me. They did not support me in turning over his computer to the FBI. It was his work laptop. So yeah,
Yeah,
they supported
they
to
didn't
keep me
want their
safe.
name on that. They did not want their name on that. And I mean, I understand, but Jesus,
Yeah. So I
ugh.
won the lottery. And so when I went to build Safe and Harm's Way, and keep in mind that plan didn't go as well. That plan didn't, I mean, it was executed flawlessly, but he refused to move out. Like he show off with police and all of this, refused to let me and my daughter leave. But at the time when I was building Safe and Harm's Way after that, I realized that I won the lottery there and I realized how little people didn't. So the whole goal was to amplify where I won the lottery and bring that to everybody else. And then also to know where I didn't win the lottery and then try to increase those services for everybody else. Because even with, I've spent my career being a pharmaceutical sales rep. So even with that very high paying job and a company car and a credit card, I still ended up for 6 weeks living in my car, house sitting, sleeping on people's couches because there was no space at a domestic violence shelter and that operated capacity. So just in the state of Missouri, for example, about 25,000 people needed help last year with housing due to domestic violence. 25,000 people plus requested it. About 1,100 people got it. There is no
Wow.
grant. So that's why Safe and Harm's Way was made the way it was, so we can be all online. Can we help you get housing? We're not designed for that, but can we help you get to the place to find the right people and create a safety plan and everything else associated with? Yes, we can. And
Yes.
that's how we're built, is to amplify where I won and amplify where I didn't, and try to create it for every person to be able to receive that kind of help. My high school girlfriends paid for a moving truck, paid for everything
Wow.
to get me out.
I'm so glad I mean, because that was needed.
Yeah.
A support system was definitely needed. Okay, let's see a few more questions. Okay, this question was submitted by Jory Kotowski. What are some steps that you've taken to heal, Carolyn?
I dove in heavy on therapy. I was going twice a week, and plus meditation, plus trying to walk, plus trying to drink more water. And the reality is, I was also loading in a bottle of wine and a lot of Xanax and potato chips. So healthy, not healthy. But I decided to double down on therapy. Now, there are some specific things, and if you're fortunate, and there are a lot of organizations at a local level who specifically deal with sexual harm. And if you need a resource for that, I would go, my favorite partner is domesticshelters.org. At domesticshelters.org, you can plug in your zip code and it will pop up every single service in your area related to violence and sexual assault that you can take advantage of. So I'll share on this timeline, right? So I discovered this in 2016. I get out, I finally find a place to live. I'm going to therapy. I'm doing all these extra additional modalities. I'm listening to a lot of music. And this is a beautiful point where my Dave Matthews world just blew up in the most amazing ways, because I had seen so many shows with him. I honestly wondered, am I going to be able to go back?
Right,
Like, am I going to be able to enjoy? What's that going to do to my body to be,
right.
you know,
Valid question.
yeah. And so I decided that I was going to figure out a way to lay new pavement and everywhere. And my friend group, while they fully support and endorse and fuel my Dave Matthews obsession, they really don't necessarily want to go to a concert with me.
Yeah.
Although I've gotten them to, and they love it, but I have a Spotify playlist that are all my favorite live shows of Dave Matthews at the shows I've been that I love. And then I have an accompanying document that I give to people that is a tutorial about the Dave Matthews Band
I love
and
that.
why
I
you
love that so much.
yeah, and so if you're gonna go to a show with me, then you get the playlist and you get the tutorial, and I might quiz you. I always start with that. I might quiz you too.
I
So
love the way that you school people. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. So at that point was when they announced the Mexico trip, and I thought, yes, I need to go. How am I going to go? I don't know anybody. And that's when my
Right.
date group exploded. I received a random message from people living in Dallas saying, "Hey, we've been trolling the boards. We're looking for people who would most likely have the first stab at, based on when you join the warehouse." To raise your hand for the tickets. You look pretty cool and you look like you're going to have an early number. Would you want to go with us? And you be the third. It's going to be me, my wife, and my friend from grade school. My former husband is a police officer, so he ran them all. He ran their records. Turns out they're fine. They live very near to my aunt that I love. Actually went down 2 or 3 times to visit with them, because if you think about it, like, I am coming out of this horrific experience, about to like go to a foreign country with strangers on faith. And I remember praying so hard, like, let me make the right choice, because I need to be back in touch with this band. I need
Yeah.
the live music and the energy that these musicians fuel my soul with. So I did. And that just expanded my day world in amazing ways. And to the bigger group of people, just incredible humans that have allowed me and supported me on the journey too, held fundraisers, donated, swooped me up when I've had, a little bit of a back step in my healing journey. So it's been a beautiful evolution to include the band, and then it was a joy to lay pavement at all these new venues and all the old venues that we had gone with people that I absolutely love. So that part of the healing journey and taking advantage of those solutions are paramount to anybody's choice to heal. And let me be very transparent. The most egregious part of all of this is the sexual assaults, is being drugged, is knowing that, is discovering cameras and wondering where he's put videos in the world. I don't
Right.
know that I'll ever have the answers to those questions. I was too afraid to seek that kind of specific help for myself until 2023. So I discovered it in 2016. I'm doing all different kinds of therapy. And I'm not even addressing the most egregious parts of it until 2023 because I was too scared to go down that road. Going down that road, I say this out loud for any listener. If you're struggling with how do I, something big that happened in your life that caused you harm, that made you feel sad, worry, lied, felt like you were being screamed at, fear, pain, all of that, any of it, the best thing you can do for yourself and the hardest is go ahead and get specific help for the specific thing that did you most harm. And there are amazing people. I went to this organization in Kansas City called Moxa. My goal someday is to be so philanthropically enterprised that I can take their business model and replicate it in every major city across the country. Amazing humans. Single-handedly, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, the amount of times I have been curled up in a ball on the floor, I'd do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
And I
my
would have done it
gosh.
sooner. So if you're wondering, and if you're feeling like, oh no, I got this, and that's how I was feeling like, I mean, that is horrific, but I'm doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's, when you get into the specifics related to that kind of trauma, there are specifically trained people who can do that. And so if you are on that journey and you're looking at domesticshelters.org, or you're looking at how do I find that, and you come up against some roadblocks, don't stop. Keep asking the questions, keep talking to people, keep finding your person. If you go to therapy and that therapist doesn't align with you, don't stop. Find the next person that's going to align with you. Keep
Yeah.
going until you find the person that helps. And I know it's hard to tell your story over and over, but when you find the person that helps, the exponential growth there changes generations. Because
Yes.
when you don't get addressed on these kinds of things, it shows up in how you are a parent. It shows up in your next relationships. It shows up in how you are at work. It shows up in how you relate to your finances. It touches everything about your life. So find the people and keep talking until you find the people, because I guarantee you life is so much better in the after when you do that hard work.
Yes. Yes. Okay, let's get through a few more questions. There's so many, and so many people submitted more than one question, so it's really hard to decide. This is from Michelle Brown. So a lot of questions that I'm noticing is, did you call the police? Where are their legal actions taken? What a lot of questions about like what happened to him. And while you may not can give that information out, was that something that was ever like, hey, someone needs to know about this club or whatever? Like, what did you do with that? Or could you?
Yeah, I immediately went to the police. I had enough evidence of what I found on his computer that ultimately, when printed out, amounted to four file drawer cabinets of evidence. I went to the police with my daughter and I reported it. And that was in March 23rd of 2016. I got a police report and I followed up. I made so many phone calls until I found somebody at the FBI to talk with me. I followed up with the FBI, never charged. This was his freedom of speech. And because I didn't have any medical evidence, and because the memories I have aren't fully out of my head, I was labeled a bad witness. And what happened to me, I found out because I gave a big keynote presentation at a gala back in October, about 500 people, and an investigative reporter started doing some homework on what happened to me. And think about this, between even the time you and I did our podcast, that's when the case in France, where that woman, her husband was doing this in France to her. And the French authorities, like, people were prosecuted, people faced jail time. None of that happened to me, for me. And the investigative reporter after that gala went to the police and asked to see all the files. Renae, they didn't even file a report. So I'm calling back on the report number they gave me, which was completely bogus. And they're telling me, yeah, like, we don't have anything else. They didn't even enter it. And meanwhile, I'm going out talking about this, creating this, thinking I'm raising awareness enough that if someone says, hey, and at the time I was living in Kansas City, like, the last thing I remember is talking to this guy at the bar. And now I know I've been sexually assaulted. And lived and maybe went to where I lived in Lee Summit, Missouri, and reported to the police, that it would at least trigger. Nothing,
Right.
nothing. And that happens a lot. That's why you see people standing in Washington, D.C. talking about how they were sexually assaulted and no one did anything. That is common. That's why Jackson County Police Department in Lee Summit, Missouri will publish how they're the safest city in the country.
Because they don't write bad things down.
They don't write bad things down. So yeah, it's insane. If this is something that's happened to you, then also we can put some resources in the show notes. But there's two things that Safe in Harm's Way has. If you're a college student and this has happened to you, male or female, I shouldn't even say college student. If you are someone who has an .edu email called I want to make sure I get it right. It's called Callisto. It's like Bumble, but for sexual predators. So people can upload to a safe server all the information about who abused them, because people who do this, they're not one and done. They do it to a lot of people. I mean, in my case, my former fiance, they only get more egregious over time because they have to up the ante on the thrill that they get in order to even be sexually aroused by it. So they just get worse over time. But Callisto actually allows you to put the information in, and then they'll match similar stories and similar geographies. And if there's the same perpetrator, they match those. And that's allowed people to come together and actually file suits against perpetrators, because more than one person has had the experience. So Callisto is a great organization. You can find it on Safe in Harm's Way, or you can just Google them yourself. But what we have on Safe in Harm's Way is we also have what's called Seek Then Speak. Seek Then Speak allows you, no matter when you had this assault experience, to document what you remember in the way that you remember it. Because we talked about a trauma response, in your brain can only let go of so much information, and you don't get to decide. Your brain's just thinking, I need to keep them alive, so I'm going to do this. And so it allows you, as your memories unfold, to document it. And then you can use that form to talk with police, to talk with, a hospital staff, to talk with educators that you run into, to talk with a therapist. You can use it to report, or you can use it just to keep it for yourself and be able to start documenting what you remember, and the chance that maybe someday you want to report it, or that you just want to remind yourself that you're not crazy. So
It's a safe place to document it.
So we have those two options as well that people can tap into in order to start to get them the help they need when they're ready to get it.
Now, I know that you've started a new part and you're very excited about what you're doing. Can you speak to that before we end this particular episode? Speak to that, because I have had the chance to use it myself, and I was very impressed on how completely thorough it was and how discreet it was. Tell us about your new project.
So we've got a couple things going. The newest one it's our fourth installment. It's actually our final installment. It won't go away, but we're going to trick it out a little differently. But it just launched, our fourth installment, and the overarching project is called The Last I'm Sorry.com. Last iteration is called He's No Prince. So HESNOPRINCE. He's No Prince. At Safe in Harm's Way, we're never going to show bruised and battered people. We're never going to show coffins with flowers on them, because people deflect from that. I mean, my relationship is bad, but it's not that bad, when actually it is that bad, but it allows people a cognitive out.
Yeah.
So we use beauty and art and poetry to capture people's attention. So this particular installment looks like a fairy tale, and it looks like a beautiful princess on her balcony. You can see she's a little tear stained in her eyes. You can see that she's a little unkept, looks a little like things have not been good. And behind her is a prince coming up with a snarl on his face and pointing his finger and about ready to grab her from behind. And it says, maybe tomorrow he'll be charming. Now, I know in this last episode, we've used the male and female pronouns, but the male is the abuser. We understand that happens to men and women. This was just part of the fairy tale arc that we wanted to give. But what we do then is we allow people you can scan the QR code, or you can just go to He's No Prince, which leads you to The Last I'm Sorry, the overarching thing. And it gives you to identify for what's happening to you right now and the most immediate need you want to solve. And then you get one or two solutions that says, do this next. It's built for men. It's built for women. It's built for people of color. It's built for the queer community. It's built for immigrants. It's built for medically compromised folks, because the best way to issue an abuse when you're living with a diabetic is for the abuser to withhold their insulin.
That's right.
So it allows, based again on how somebody perceives themselves and identifies, and then what their next most pressing need is. It's done online because, as we've talked about statistically, there's no room at the end. And even if you call the domestic hotline number, 40% of those calls go unanswered. There's too much. They're operating at overcapacity. So by using he'snoprince.com or the last I'm sorry.com, you get to pick out one or two different things that fit the most unique thing you're experiencing now. You click out of the browser, it won't open again for another 3 days. There's instant and permanent safety features designed. We launched this in billboards across the country and in Times Square because we need to know that our resources show up organically and easily found by someone when they are not under the control of an abuser so that they can take action. Because if they try to take action and they don't get help, then the chances that they're going to take action again, not good. We talked
Right.
about the statistic. If something happens to somebody and they don't get a first good reaction, it's going to be 4 decades before they try again. So it allows people to get what they need instantly and allows people to do that in the safety when they're safe at home or they're in the carpool line or in the grocery store or by themselves. It allows them to find it. So you'll find that every one of our campaigns you'll find in billboards across America. When you're pumping gas and there's a video screen at the gas station at the gas pump, we run on those. When you're in a high-rise office building and you're going to the doctor's appointment, we pick out elevators and office buildings that have videos in their elevators so that people can find it. In clinic offices, any bus stations, airports, train stations, we're there putting out the message so that people can find it. And
Wow.
those campaigns have won numerous awards across the country. We were even a finalist at the Cannes Film Festival. So we do some really great work with art, beauty, poetry, bring in the data and the technology, and then offer the services that people need to get, which they can't if they try the traditional routes.
Right, right. I was thinking myself like, okay, if I'm in that situation, which I have been, and I won't talk about my story on this podcast, but I've been there to where I've had a partner that checked my phone a lot for no reason other than just needing that control. So if someone's hearing everything, what are some ways that you can assure them that there's no way if you are picking up your kids from school and you go into this and you write down some information, when you get home and you forget to delete all your browsers or whatever you do to get rid of stuff when you think someone's going to look through your phone, what's some safety that you could tell them of, hey, this particular website, you just don't have to worry about it. No one will ever know that you did this. Explain that to someone who may be concerned about that.
Sure. And there is one action that people need to take. They do need to exit out of the browser. It's just not automatically going to disappear. But when you exit out of the browser, that doesn't open up. So that safety
Okay.
feature means it's just gone to Google. People can't go back. People can't try to open it again. It just gives you this fake, and not fake, you can actually use it, but it's a Google homepage, very simple. And no one can reopen that browser or click the button at the top that spins it
Yeah.
to have it refresh. It won't do that. So as long as you're exiting out of it, it closes everything down and makes it impossible for somebody to get back in.
Yes. I even went as far as to, and this again is all on my phone. Just there is a way that you can look whether you're getting, however, you're getting your internet to check the history. So after it closed out and took me to the Google thing and I tried to press back and go back into it, of course, it wouldn't let me. It closed out that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to check my history because that's another great way that people often find out stuff that we forget to clear if we're needing to keep something private. And it was not on my history at all. And so it's just so well designed. Repeat those two websites one more time, even though we will have them in the show notes. Repeat those one more time for us.
Sure. So the last I'm sorry, that's the umbrella. That's what everything points back to. So you can either just put in the last I'm sorry.com or he's HESNO Prince. He's no Prince. That also, if you type in he's no prince.com, it's just going to go straight to the last I'm sorry.com. You can look all of these resources or then again on safeandharmsway.org along with meditation and a lot of how to heal and a lot of survivor stories. And we divide it into technology, like I'm afraid somebody's using technology to harm me. And then we've got all the things that are protecting you. So we go by feelings again. I have a fear of this. I'm an advocate and I don't know how to give somebody the best help. Those kinds of things are there so that people can find what they need again in the immediate times. But those, if you're on Safe and Harm's Way, then use you're still clearing your browser stuff because it doesn't have the same mechanisms yet as our other our ancillary sites do.
Well, thank you so much for just, the re-educating listeners. And, we did tie in Dave Matthews Band. You're still such a big fan. And I know that you're excited of, what's to come. What's the next thing that they're going to surprise us? Of course, next year, 35 years. So we know something good is coming. So it's like Christmas. We're like, what's it going to be? And I hope that they come to the Midwest again, right? Like,
I
come back to
know.
St. Louis, come back to Kansas City, come back to Rogers, Arkansas. Like, we want you here. And so, we were able to tie it all together. The beautiful part of what this community, which is what this podcast is about, this community of fans that surround this music, and how we've all kind of networked together to help each other. And it's such a beautiful story. And of course, you're a big part of that, is because let us not forget bad things are happening. Let us not forget that there are still bad people at Dave Matthews Band shows. But let us not forget the world that we live in. And so let us be prepared for what could happen and what will happen to someone next.
And I think all of that is so important. I'm glad we're having the conversation. I hope that any listener, if you have any additional questions, I'm giving out my email, and that's just Caroline, Caroline, at safeinharmsway.org. I'm happy to answer any other questions. I'm happy to get you aligned with some of our other services if you need. Want to make sure that people feel in community and supported. And I want to emphasize that the healing music of the band is what brought me out of most of the sadness. And the amazing humans that I opened up myself to meeting and traveling with and experiencing with are just some of the most stellar people you'd ever want to have in your life. And so that's part of when I do give a lot of presentations and I talk about healing, I talk about my experience with Dave Matthews Band through that perspective, because it is so vital. It does heal. It does fix. And opening yourself to community in that way is a beautiful opportunity for you to enhance any other modality of healing that you're using.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much again for being willing. You're going to have a commercial that circulates through every episode. So whether after this you listen, you go back to episode 1, which was in 2022, or you go to episode 100, you're going to hear a commercial from Safe in Harm's Way, but it's going to be rotating out. So, don't skip it after you've heard it once, because we're going to keep coming back and updating you and educating you with more information that we hope that you do not have to use. But if you find yourself in that place, you are ready for what to do next. And so thank you again for being on the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a
Definitely.
community thing, because I'll be taking our resources, and I'm just gonna make it really easy for any listener to download those so they don't even have to search. Again, put it in front of people, get it to the limited amount of clicks they have to make. So as we put forth new commercials, gonna be putting I'm gonna take our services and download it, and people could just, either offer it to a friend or download it themselves and, have it quick and easy, however they wanna store it for their personal use.
Awesome. Well, so be sure to check out the show links, whether you're listening to this on a podcast app or watching this on YouTube. Just check the description and everything will be right there. And speaking of YouTube, if you are listening to this, you can watch it all. All the episodes except for the first season are available on YouTube simply just by following the Space Between Podcasts. Of course, we're available on all of the social media apps too: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you can email me as well. It's super, super easy. You don't even have to write it down. It's simply Renae at the Space Between Podcast, dmb.com. So, guys, until the next episode, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band.